the sun and the stars, they do make a yearly journey of 364 days. Um, let's jump to, matter of fact, keep reading.
Okay. And you shall command the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, and these shall constitute a complete year. And they shall not disturb its time from its days and from its festivals, for all shall fall out in them according to their witness. And they shall not leave out any day nor disturb any festivals.
Mm-hmm.
But if they neglect and do not observe them according to his command, then they shall disturb all their seasons, and the years shall be dislodged from their order, and they shall neglect their laws. And all the children of Israel shall forget, and shall not find the path of the years, and shall forget the new moons, and seasons, and Shabbat. And they shall go astray as to all the order of the years.
Mm-hmm.
For I know, and from this time on I shall declare to you, and it is not of my own devising, for the book is written before me, and on the tablets of the Shamaim the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the festivals of the covenant, and walk according to the festivals of the Gentiles after their straying, and after their ignorance.
Okay. Key verse right here.
For there shall be those who shall assuredly make observations of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Now it disturbs the seasons, and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon.
Okay, stop right there. So, some of you right now are saying, but B, you just told us that the feasts and stuff are conducted by the moon. So what is this saying? Well, what it's saying is, because the moon trails the sun on a year-to-year basis by 10 days. If you continually follow the moon and don't take into account the sun and the stars as it comes to the reckoning of a year, and all you follow is the moon on a 12-month cycle, what will happen is eventually the Passover and all the rest of the feasts will start getting further and further back into the winter time. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, if the Passover, which is determined in the new year, and the Passover is determined because the first month of the year is called Abib. It's called Abib, which means green thing, because the barley crop in the land of Israel would have to be ripened green for the first of the year. Not only that, you have to have a new moon. It's all these things taken, you have to take into account when it comes to the reckoning of a year. So if you don't, so what will happen is, if you only follow the moon, you'll continually go further and further back into the winter, to where the barley crop wouldn't be ripe when it's time for the new year and the feast season to start. But however, you need them both. So the sun, because it's the sun and the stars, because it's a perfect 364-day cycle, you know that it's the new moon that's closest to that, what is it, the vernal equinox? Yeah. The vernal equinox that you go to. And you won't, and that's why after, I think it's 3 years, sometimes you'll hear what's called Adar 2. Adar is what is the name. We know the Most High didn't give it this name, but that's the name that they give for the 12th lunar month. Well, you'll hear the term Adar 2, because sometimes they'll add a 13th month, and that's why sometimes, because the so-called Easter, they place that in a certain proximity to the equinox as well. But that's why sometimes you'll have Easter in March, and sometimes you'll have Easter in April, because of that, because the season change. It's the same thing. They add an extra month, and we're going to read about this in Enoch. You have to add an extra month to that year to keep the feast in the proper season. You cannot only follow the moon. You also have to follow the stars. You also have to follow the sun. All of these things are taken into account. That's why when you read Enoch, you'll see it has a complete chapter on the sun and the path that the sun takes. Then it has a complete, 3 chapters on the moon. There's a ton of evidence that shows that the lunar cycle is definitely key in understanding the feast, and it's not just contingent off the sun. But I definitely wanted to bring some understanding to that. Plus, we're gonna stay in Jubilees real quick. Let's grab Jubilees 12 and 16. But we're gonna get some understanding more about some of these things, once we go into Enoch. But let's go Jubilees 12 and 16.
The book of Jubilees, chapter 12 and verse 16. And in the 6th week, in the 5th year, Abraham sat up throughout the night.
Throughout the what?
Throughout the night.
Uh-huh.
On the new moon of the 7th month.
On the new moon of the 7th month. Throughout the night. Not throughout the day. Which means that the new month did not come in by the sun. It came in by the moon. He sat throughout the night. Keep reading.
On the new moon of the 7th month, to observe the stars.
To do what?
To observe the stars.
Uh-huh.
From the evening to the morning, in order to see what will be the character of the year of the year with regard to the rains. And he was alone as he sat and observed.
So he observed the stars that evening of the new moon of the 7th month. He observed the stars. I mean, you can read in Josephus that showed you Abraham was like he taught the Egyptians math and arithmetic and astronomy.
Exactly.
Pretty much the study of the heavenly bodies. Not going into the astrology aspect of it, but from a righteousness aspect, you can look in the stars and it'll give, like you said, it'll give you an account of the weather. That's how you see like the Farmer's Almanac, how it could predict how much rain we would have per season. It did it by looking at the skies. Exactly. It's the same thing.
That's what the Most High created the sun and the moon
exactly.
for, and the stars.
For signs.
Exactly.
Exactly. For signs and seasons. Okay, let's go to Jubilees 27 and 19.
The book of Jubilees, chapter 27 and verse 19. And Yaakov went from Beersheba to go to Haran on the 1st year of the 2nd week in the 44th Yobelim. And he came to Luz on the mountains, that is Bethel, on the new moon of the 1st month of this week. And he came to the place in the evening.
When was it?
In the evening.
So it came on a new moon in the evening. Go ahead.
And turned from the way to the west of the road that night. And turned from the way to the west of the road that night, and he slept there.
That night, read.
For the sun had gone down.
For the sun had gone down. It's clear, crystal clear, that the new moon, the new month comes in by the moon, not the sun. So now we're going to get into a little bit of Enoch. And this, like I said, it can get kind of confusing. But, after reading it and rereading it and rereading it, eventually you can kind of navigate your way through what it's saying. I can halfway do it. But let's go to Enoch 72. 72 is where it starts off speaking about the sun.
Start from the beginning.
Verse 1 and verse 2.
The book of Enoch, chapter 72 and verse 1. The book of the courses of the luminaries of the heaven, the relations of each according to their classes, their dominion and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the set-apart Malachim, who was with me, who is their God, showed me. And he showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity, till the new creation is accomplished, which endures till eternity. And this is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary, the sun, has its rising in the eastern portals of the heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises.
Stop it. We're not going to go through all of this, because it's just going to go through all the portals that the sun rises set in. It's going to go through how many days and are in that particular month. We're going to pull out one key verse, and that's verse 32. Read verse 32, because this is the end of it. It goes through all the portals, and it kind of gets like, if we don't really have to do it for the sake of this lesson, but you can read through it, and it may give you a little bit of edification.
Verse 32. On that day, the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly as to its days, 364. And the length of the day and of the night, and the shortness of the day and of the night arise. Through the course of the sun, these distinctions are made.
That's good right there. So it's the sun and the stars make the 364 yearly cycle, and you'll see that last month there's 31 days because you have an intercalendary day where the season change. So let's jump over to chapter 73 and start at verse 1.
73 and 1.
The 72 is dealing strictly with the sun. Just chapter 72 deals strictly with the sun. Go ahead.
And after this law, I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary, which is named the moon. And her circumference is like the circumference of the Shamaim. And her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in definite measure.
Okay, stop right there. So when it says smaller luminary, it's not talking about size. It's talking about less light. Less light than the sun. But it says that read verse 2 again.
Verse 2. And her circumference is like the circumference of the Shamaim, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in definite measure.
And light is given to her in definite measure, which means there's a certain portion of light that's reflected off of the moon day by day, definite measure. Go ahead.
And her rising and setting changes every month, and her days are like the days of the sun. And when her light is uniform, it amounts to the 7th part of the light of the sun.
So when it says,
and when her light is uniform, it amounts to the 7th part of the light of the sun.
So when her light is uniform, when it's full, then it's only like 1/7 of the light that's in the sun. Go ahead.
And thus she rises, and her first phase in the east comes forth on the 30th morning. And on that day she becomes visible and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day, together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises.
So according to this, when the sun rises on the 30th morning, that should be the day of the new moon as well, according to the way this reads. Let's go to chapter 74. 74. And read verse 1 and 2.
74 verses 1. And I saw another course, a law for her, and how according to that law she performs her monthly revolution.
Okay, stop right there. I just want to, I'm sorry, to give y'all a little, just so y'all don't think I just totally skipped out on chapter 23. But, 73. But chapter 73 goes into like this, how much light is in it on this day, and how much light is in it on this other day, and how many parts is in it on this day. So, like I said, you can read it, but for the sake of this lesson, it's really not that important for what we're doing. Go ahead with that 74 and 2.
Okay, verse 2. And all these, Uriel, the set-apart Malachim, who was the leader of them, showed to me and their positions. And I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me. And I wrote down their months as they were, and the appearance of their lights till 15 days were accomplished.
15 days were accomplished, like we previously stated in Psalms chapter 81 and verse 3 and verse 4. It's 15 days between a new moon and a full moon. Jump down to verse 4.
Verse 4. And in certain months she alters her settings, and in certain months she pursues her own peculiar course. In 2 months the moon sets with the sun in those 2 middle portals, the 3rd and the 4th.
Okay, that's good. But those 2 months where it sets, I believe, are the equinoxes, if I'm not mistaken. The one that happens in the one that we just had in the spring, and then the one that happens in the fall as well. But this whole chapter 74 is also about the course of the moon. Like I said, it's not just willy-nilly. If the moon had no bearing on the year or the seasons or the feast, like why is there so much information on the moon? That's just just reasoning right there. Let's go to chapter 75 and read verse 1 and 2.
75 verses 1. And the leaders of the heads of the thousands who were placed over the whole creation and over all the stars have also to do with the 4 intercalary